Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. Well, making downtown Reno more attractive to locals and tourists alike is a top priority, at least according to city officials. So the city is working with a commission called Operation Downtown to find ways to clean it up, make it safer, and better serve our growing homeless population. So Ken Crater, chair of Operation Downtown, is here now to talk about everything they are doing. Ken, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Ariana.
All right, so I understand Operation Downtown has kind of an interesting creation story, so tell me about that.
Well, I had been working with Mayor Sheevy before she became mayor and talking to her about downtown, and we both basically agreed that that was an issue that needed to be dealt with more than anything, because Reno is such a great place to live and work, but the one thing that's been holding us back is our downtown. And then I was at a meeting with a group of people that wanted to look at some options and how we could deal with downtown. And I never forget that Mike Kazmersky came up to me after the meeting and said, Ken, if we can clean up downtown Reno, my job is easy. So then I really started to realize that this was an effort that needed to move forward. So the mayor and I put together a list of folks that we thought would be willing to make the commitment to spend some time, and called them up, set a meeting, and off we went.
So who is in the group?
There's a large number of people. We started out with about 32 people, and we've got nonprofit leaders, we've got business people, we've got elected officials, we've got homeowners that live within the downtown area. We tried to put together a broad cross-section of folks that live and work in downtown Reno. Since then, we've grown to over 100 people that are interested in some form in dealing with the issues of downtown Reno.
Wow, so do all these people come to all your meetings?
It's amazing. Councilwoman Jardin basically made the comment that, Ken, you have the only group that I know that keeps growing in population, but I think the least amount of people we've ever had at a meeting is about 20, but sometimes we have upwards of 40 people. There's a huge commitment on the part of folks to work towards solutions to clean up downtown Reno.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a unifying thread in every survey they take and just about anyone you talk to. And it feels like locals don't really go down to downtown as much as they would if it didn't have these issues. Do you find that most of the people you talk to have the same consensus?
Yeah, it's amazing. There's some good things happening in downtown Reno, for example, along the Truckee River, and some folks are starting to discover all the great things that exist down there along the river, the fine restaurants. But the core area of downtown, people don't go there, and it's kind of sad. If you talk to some of the major casino operators, they actually tell their patrons not to go east of Center Street or west of Sierra Street after 10 p.m. because of safety issues. So wow. Clearly that tells me right there that there's more that we need to do to clean up downtown.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to imagine being in another city, staying at a hotel, and having the concierge say to me, don't go past this street because you won't be safe anymore. I've never had that experience. That's wild and not exactly encouraging people to come back and experience our city, I imagine.
Well, not only that, I did some research on Yelp sites, and if you look at some of the cities that have done a lot to further their downtowns and make them more desirable, they get really positive comments from visitors on Yelp. But if you look at a lot of the comments on Reno, they're not good. And a lot of these people basically state, hey, I won't be back to Reno.
Man, it's a bummer to hear that. Okay, so something I like about your commission is that you're action-based. You're not fact-finding based. I even saw in one of your presentations, no more studies, right? So tell me why.
Because there's enough studies. In fact, it's funny, I used to work at the city of Reno in another life. I was a traffic engineer, and I'll never forget that my boss walked me into a room and it was shelves full of studies. And he goes, this is our room full of studies. If you need to find anything, you can probably find it here. And that's when I realized, wow, okay, let's forget the studies and actually start acting and making improvements. And that's what Operation Downtown is all about. And everybody agrees. The studies are there, the knowledge base is there. Let's start coming up with solutions that we can actually implement, both short-term solutions as well as long-term solutions for the good of our community.
Okay, so let's talk about the main priorities you guys have identified. I thought it was pretty interesting that very top of your list was supportive housing for the homeless. You know, of all of the things you looked at, that was the number one. Tell me why.
Well, it's kind of interesting, but I have a background in transportation engineering, and so I used what I call a community-based weighting system. It sounds complex, but it's really not. But it's a way to develop 100% consensus from the folks that are involved in the committee. So we essentially went through this process and started looking at what makes people tick and what their main concerns, issues were. And at the end of the day, we came up with a 100-base consensus on our priorities. Number 1 is permanent supportive housing. Number 2 is blight. Number 3 is mental health and addiction issues. And 4 is creating basically a walkable downtown with the Truckee River as a welcome mat. And like I said, everybody was 100% unanimous in those being our priorities.
Why is number 1 supportive housing?
So we have learned over the last couple of years, and I certainly have gotten an education through bringing guest speakers to Operation Downtown, going on tours, and doing research. But at the end of the day, if you put somebody in permanent supportive housing that's willing to get help, that's a very important distinction. The cost of having that person in permanent supportive housing versus on the street, where they're in and out of the emergency room, in and out of jail, ambulance trips, and the negative impact to downtown businesses, the cost to put somebody in permanent supportive housing is far less than the negative impacts associated with that person being on the street.
Yeah, the statistic I got from the city a little while back was it costs between $150 and $500 a day per person who's living on the street. And that's compared to, I think it's roughly $26 a day for a person in the shelter, and even less if you look at different types of supportive housing. So just from a pragmatic standpoint, the numbers make sense to go for a project that puts a roof over their heads, gets them in shelter, because then you can kind of start working on the wraparound issues.
Exactly. And for example, the city of Reno did a comprehensive Housing First initiative back in 2006. And the results were absolutely amazing. They tracked 150 individuals that they got into permanent supportive housing over a 12-month period. And it ranged from reductions in emergency room visits to like 36%, incarceration 82%, nighttime emergency room visits around 80%. But the most compelling statistic to me is these people got not just medical care and dental care and counseling, mental health services, but they also got job training. And at the end of that 12-month study period, the average income from the people that went into that program went up almost 250%. That tells you right there that if you get people in permanent supportive housing, including job training and interview, how to go out for an interview, a lot of these people have never even been in a job interview. To raise their incomes up 250%, now they can afford a studio on their own income.
And the housing has to come first, because someone who is in survival mode on the streets, they're not able to focus on learning job training. They have to worry about staying alive every day. It's just a fact, right?
That's it exactly. Until people have a roof over their heads, there's no way they can ever be clean and get their hair washed, shaved, whatever, in order to go in for a job interview. You've got to have that permanent supportive housing. But a lot of these people at first, they don't want help. And I've learned through experience now and working with a lot of these individuals, after you touch somebody the 10th time, the 12th time, the 15th time, and you start to develop a relationship, and the biggest thing is trust. They start trusting that you actually want to help them as a human being. All of a sudden they'll go, you know what, I'm ready. Let's go get help.
Okay, so you've got all these initiatives, the supportive housing, blight reduction, mental health and addiction, creating a more walkable downtown. What have you been able to accomplish so far in getting toward those goals?
We've actually accomplished some amazing things. One of the first things that we're able to do is we got the Housing and Urban Development to issue 50 project-based vouchers. And one of the things I learned early on is that there's too many silos in this community within this profession of nonprofits and social services. So we've worked really hard to break down those silos and get people working together. And
when you say silos, sorry, what exactly do you mean by that?
So in other words, these people work within silos. They don't go outside that silo and talk to people in other organizations, other people in business that can help them with their specific organization. And I learned, much to my dismay, that the head of the Reno Housing Authority did not know the assistant county manager for social services. So I set up a meeting the next day, and the assistant county manager agreed to provide case management for a substantial number of those 50 project-based vouchers. Hopes of Northern Nevada issued more. So now we have 50 people off the streets of downtown Reno into permanent supportive housing. And when you go to a meeting now, it's fantastic because a lot of times you'll get 2 or 3 different agencies and nonprofits talking about one specific issue, and now they're working together. For example, the Children's Cabinet, the Eddy House, and the Nevada Youth Empowerment Project all went after the same grant. And prior to, they were all fighting over the same amount of money, the same limited pot of money. Now they're realizing if they work together, they can actually increase the pot of money because their power in numbers. A couple other things, we've managed to get the City Council moving forward on a business improvement district within downtown Reno. That's going to be a huge deal because of the ambassadors and navigators that now deal with the homeless issue. On average, it takes a Reno police officer 2.5 hours to deal with somebody, for example, that's inebriated on the sidewalk. Now you've got a case manager, a caseworker that's trained to deal with this person that can start touching them. So we've actually managed to accomplish a lot in the couple of years that we've been working on this.
And that's all funded through that HUD grant?
Well, the HUD grant funded the project-based vouchers. The Business Improvement District is being funded because there's 2 special assessment districts in downtown Reno right now, one for police and one for safe and clean. And now that they've seen how important these bids are to a thriving downtown community, the City Council has basically voted to move the funds from these special improvement districts into the bid, which will be managed as a private organization, which allows that bid to hire the case managers, the social workers, the people to deal with the safe and clean aspects of downtown Reno.
So these are actual people who are going to be patrolling downtown Reno, not police officers, and their #1 goal is to help the homeless population?
There's a lot of different things they do. The ambassadors are goodwill people. They will help somebody find a restaurant. They'll help a lady to her car after hours when it's dark if she doesn't feel safe. And they just are there right on the streets of downtown Reno, helping tourists, helping citizens of Reno just enjoy their trip to downtown Reno. But the navigators are trained social workers, and now you've got navigators that can go up and help a homeless person instead of a police officer. And this is done throughout the country in most major cities, and several folks, including myself, have made trips down to Sacramento to visit the Downtown Sacramento Partnership to learn how their business improvement district is functioned. So we're not reinventing the wheel, and we actually hired a consultant team that has substantial expertise in this to help set it up. So it's going to be a very important part of improving our downtown.
Are they going to wear like bright yellow shirts or something
They
so
do.
we know what they look like?
They do. In fact, in Sacramento, we call them the bumblebees.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay. Well, I think that's a perfect point for us to take a quick break, but sit tight. Coming up on Face the State, I will be back with Ken Crater to talk more about solutions for downtown and what it will take to make the rest of them happen. Stay with us.